Hello! Welcome to my new YouTube channel. It's my first ever video. This is going to be great. Fantastic. I love it. We're here to talk about D&D today. See, I got the screen. Got that. I got the little dragon on it. So pretty. Yes. So, hi. Here to talk about D&D today. I play D&D. I like it. I DM it. In fact, I am DMing a group right now through my homebrew campaign. We've been doing that for about a year. Before that, the first time I DM'd, I homebrewed a group. I DM'd a group for about a year and a half, taking over from my first DM. Hi, Michael. All of this is to say, I am not the most knowledgeable person. I'm not the most experienced person when it comes to DMing and Dungeons and Dragons. I don't have the 20 plus years of running campaigns under my belt that someone like Matt Colville or Matt Mercer would have. And I love those guys. I watch them all the time. Notice me, senpai. But in that relatively short amount of time of being a DM, I've tried really hard to learn and get better and make my games enjoyable for my players. And one of the things that I do is I go on websites meant for DMs to kind of throw questions out and say, hey, what do you think of this? I'm having this problem. What should I try? What do you think of this homebrew creature and all that stuff? And one of the things that I'm seeing a lot lately on these websites are, I think, newer DMs who are probably running into that within the 6-month time period of being a DM, where their players are getting out of that low level play and starting to get their abilities and starting to, really learn how to use their classes, where they're just like steamrolling encounters, right? And there are two classes that I've noticed a lot have get much of the ire here. One is a warlock and Eldritch Blast, and my guess is it's probably because a lot of people are getting into D&D through Critical Role, and Travis Willingham playing a warlock. People want to try it out. So, and then the second one is the much maligned and hated rogue and sneak attack. And almost every day I am seeing on these websites of sneak attack does so much damage. There's 6d6 or so many d6. I want to take it. How do I take it away? How do I nerf it? How do I change it? How do I do this and this and this and this and this? And I just have to say, please stop doing that. Stop trying to punish your players for playing their classes. I think, I'm not trying to be negative here. I'm not trying to be mean. I don't really know how else to say it. So this video, the biggest thing is I kind of want to dive into how can you make your encounters more challenging, and how can you make your villains and fights more memorable, So first off, there might be, and I don't think it's very many, but there might be a few people who, I've heard it said before that nothing makes me happier than a good TPK, total party kill. There are a few DMs out there who I'm sure are probably out to just beat the players. And I want to address that before I get into the rest of this, because I think it's very important to understand. A dungeon master should not be out to defeat the players. It is not, D&D is not a game where it's the players versus the dungeon master. This isn't a video game. In a video game, it is the program, or the DM, so to speak, is out to beat the player. And the ultimate goal of the player is to beat the game and beat the program. And so I think there are some new DMs who come in with that mentality because they've played video games before, and so they kind of transfer that mentality to being a DM. I highly suggest not to do that for a couple reasons. One, there's no challenge in it. again, you are God in this world, right? Like, you are the all-being, and all you have to do is push your figurative button behind your DM screen, and the sky will come crashing down on them and kill them. You know, problem solved. Characters are dead. Boy, wasn't that fun. The problem is it's not, and the players probably don't want to play again after that. The second thing is you should want the characters to succeed. You should want your players to succeed, because you, going back to this, you are not their enemy. You are a storyteller telling a story and weaving these characters in and out of events in this world that you've created. And what's the point of telling a story if people don't get to the end of it? Now, I'm not saying don't kill your characters, or your player characters. That takes the danger and the risk out of it, and I'm not saying don't do that. And it is with that I'm going to get into how to maybe do that, but in a more fair and balanced way, instead of just taking their tools from them and saying, you can't do this anymore. I said before that D&D has so many solutions available to us as dungeon masters. And so the first piece of advice I have is learn the rules. I get that there are a ton of them, and you're never going to remember them all. I ask my players all the time, like, hey, you're doing this, can you just tell me where that's coming from? Oh, okay. Or you're doing this thing, can you read off the description for me so that I know? Okay, I get that. Knowing the rules and knowing the different abilities and things about that allows you, as a DM, when you're creating these encounters and thinking of them, to really plan out ahead of time kind of how your party is going to deal with it. Again, there's not a DM in the world who hasn't had their plans shafted by the party. And it makes sense, because there's only one of you versus 4, 5, 6, 7 more of them, so they're going to outthink you all the time. But if you can plan a little bit and you'll get used to this as you DM, you'll kind of understand what your, kind of the tendencies of your party and how they go through the world. You'll be able to think a little bit okay, I know I've got this player who runs a cleric, and he takes his role as a cleric pretty seriously, so he's going to hang back and he's going to heal and do this. So I want to put a spellcaster in there that's going to distract him. And that's the biggest thing with this video that I can probably say is role play your encounters. As a dungeon master, you do not get to play a grand adventurer. But you get to play everything else, from the talking sword to the bird that craps on their head when they're walking through the woods, to the evil lich who's trying to build a tower of undead skeletons to dominate the world and do whatever a lich does. That's all you. And all of those creatures, all of those things that you roleplay, or throw at the characters, they have ideas and motivations. They aren't just sentient stat blocks to pick up and throw at the players and say, okay, let's see who does more damage. Because that's a really quick way for your bosses to lose and die and be really not that memorable. So, role play your encounters. Here's a good example that I can think of. Goblins, for example. Goblins are the go-to kind of beginning challenge rating creature that no one takes goblins seriously. What kind of threat can they be? But if you plan and you role play the goblins that you're throwing at your players, suddenly it becomes a different story. For example, a party of adventurers makes its way to a village, and in the village they hear from an old woman who complains that she hasn't had a good night's sleep in years, thanks to a group of goblins who've taken over the tomb down the road. Your adventurers, they're not heartless. They know that the woman doesn't have much to give, but she says that if they take out the goblins from the tomb, she does know that the town council would be willing to give a hefty reward. Now, these adventurers, they don't have to worry about goblins. They, just last week, they took the head of a hag in the swamp down the road. So, they tell her, no fear, madam, we shall go to the tomb, we shall clear out the goblins, and we shall return. You will sleep better at night knowing that your cows are safe from those little green menaces. So they make their way down through the entrance of the tomb. The paladin, in his heavy armor, he wasn't paying that close attention. He trips on a little line. The party stops, waiting for a trap to activate. Nothing happens. This is strange, but again, these are goblins. They probably just screwed up when making the trap. They're dumb and unthoughtful. So they continue down into the tunnel. They notice there are holes in the walls. Your rogue, being clever, makes an investigation check looking for traps on the floor, but a button or pressure plate that might set off poisonous darts coming from the holes in the wall. It doesn't find anything though. However, your ranger hears through the wall a scuttling. Suddenly there's a chattering sound on the other side. And spears and swords begin to come out of the walls, poking and prodding and slashing at our adventuring heroes. And suddenly, this is a dangerous encounter because you have these players who are trapped in a hallway with no way to attack the people who are attacking them. And there's nowhere they can go. On both sides are spears and swords, and it doesn't matter which way they run, they are going to be getting attacked. Now, it makes sense. The goblins have lived here for a couple years. They've had people come in try and clear them out before, and they don't like people coming into their house. So they made a security system where if someone trips on a little wire, there's some bells that go off further down in the tomb. They come up to the rooms that they've carved in the walls of this tunnel, and now they have arrow slits and, murder holes to stab at the people who are trying to come into their house. This is what I'm talking about, role-playing your encounters. The Lich, who has spent 100 years becoming this undead overlord, is not going to just meander into a fist fight with a bunch of high-level adventurers. Instead, he's going to have his minions deal with them, and they will have to come to him because they are below me. Why should I go and meet them? They should come to me and bow before my presence, and if they don't want to, then I guess they'll have to deal with my power and the traps that I've laid for them in my tomb of horrors. Everything has a motivation and a will to succeed. A dragon won't just land in a group of adventurers and let the rogue do sneak attack on it because it's surrounded. No, instead it's going to fly around and shoot fire breath at things and come down and swipe at it, and it'll fly back away, and maybe it will take attacks of opportunity, but the attack of opportunity is not going to be anything compared to if it gets surrounded. One thing to take into account with encounters is the action economy. That's what really kind of drives damage output in 5th edition D&D. Plan for action economy. There is nothing like a bunch of, to get back to the Archlich, legendary actions, lair actions, and minions that are just there to break up the party, being able to gang up on the main villain. That is your best friend. There's this website that I go to a lot, and they have a book, and I haven't bought the book, but I should because I read their website all the time. It's fantastic. Is The Monsters Know What They're Doing. And what they do is they sit there and I'll put a link to it, but what they do is they sit there and they say, okay, this is this creature, and this is what it would do in a fight. And they go from very simple challenge rating creatures to epic level monsters, and all you have to do is read a couple of those encounters, and you'll start to realize pretty quickly how much more challenging a fight, even with a weak monster, can be if you role play that monster and you realize that it doesn't want to fight to the death, and it's going to do whatever it can to avoid getting itself trapped, and it's going to try and outthink these adventurers. And by doing that, you will quickly make your encounters much more challenging. And your players will notice, because my players have told me, like, we love the world that you're creating, you just have to be a tank to get through it. If you're a new DM and you're having this problem of, my guys are just steamrolling my encounters, that's probably the biggest thing I can ask you to take away from this, is just role play it, think through it, and yeah, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes the players completely, overwhelm you, and they impress you, and they outthink you. But take what didn't work in that encounter and think about the next one and say, okay, I know this cleric is going to heal from behind, so I'm going to make a spellcaster that sits there and deals with him. I know this rogue is going to wait for her allies to get within melee distance and then do sneak attack. So I'm going to make something that has blind sight or that flies and people can't surround it. There are systems in the rules for you to deal with this so that you don't have to punish players by taking away their toys, essentially. So yeah, just think about that. I hope this has been a fun video for you to watch. If you stuck around to the end, I really appreciate it. I can't believe you did. I don't know what this channel is going to be. I like D&D. I like talking about it, obviously. I'm a professional photographer. That's what I do for a living. And I really like talking shop and talking about the art of photography, but there are so many YouTube channels out there that talk about photography, and I don't like getting into arguments about gear, which seems to be the real thing that people care about. And there's an entire guy whose entire channel is dedicated to the art of photography. So I'm really, and God knows how many D&D channels are out there now, I'm really screaming into the overpopulated void with both my interests here. But yeah, who knows? I've been thinking about this topic a lot because I've been seeing it come up a lot, and I just thought I'd make a video about it and discuss it. And if you liked it, like and subscribe. Do what you want. But I would love to hear from you if you did like this video. Until then, have fun. See you later.